Hola a todos, bienvenidos al cuarto episodio de Gringos Podcast. Hoy tenemos un episodio bastante especial. We have a very special episode today. I got carried away with Spanish. I was already too excited because we have a very special guest, like I said. We are here with one of the best Spanish professors in the business, one of the best you could ever have. Francisco, how are we doing?
Hi, Nick. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for the invitation, coming to speak in your podcast.
Well, thank you for taking the time to show up to our podcast. We are super excited. You're our first guest we've ever had here. First one we're interviewing. We're going to be learning a lot about your perspectives as a Spanish professor, talking about your native homeland of Colombia, and also just kind of some advice for language learners. So we are here. Obviously, want to shout out Derek as well. Derek's still here. How are we doing, man?
Doing well.
You're as excited as I am? Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not showing it right now, but I am internally.
Yeah.
As soon as we really start talking, then it'll come out. Then it'll become apparent.
Yeah. So. Once we start talking, we'll get the juices flowing. Our brains are going to be working. We're going to be super excited to dive straight into this episode. So without that being said, let's get right into it. So Francisco, our first question for you, kind of basic. It's kind of like a little icebreaker. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you are currently doing here at Michigan State, and where you've worked in the past, the places you've lived, etc.
Okay, well, that's a loaded question. I can take all like 2 hours, 3 hours to. Now, well, I was born in Colombia, in Cali. It's a little city. Well, it's not that little, but it's a small city in the southwest part of Colombia. So I grew up there. I was there until I was 20 years old. Then I moved to the US. I'm currently working as the coordinator for the 100 level, the Spanish program at MSU. So that's what I've been doing. So, kind of like going back to the beginning, the kind of like when I came to the US, that was 2003. I was living in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So it was a really interesting place in terms of, what is around and also, the people around. I was not, I didn't have any training in English. I mean, I learned English in Colombia, but it was always so repetitive that actually I couldn't use any of it in the United States. So, and it's just it has been one of the most interesting experiences of my life. Just kind of like from the get-go, it was kind of always that struggle to make myself understand a little bit. I remember the first thing I wanted to try getting off the plane. I was in Miami, and I wanted to try Burger King because we had McDonald's in Colombia by that time. By 2003, we had McDonald's. So I said like Burger King, and let me just kind of like back up a little bit just to say the American culture is so embedded in the Colombian culture as well. It's very popular. So we are aware of American football. We are aware of basketball. The politics, the economic, pretty much everything. We are really aware of what's going on in the US. So Burger King was one of those things that I was like, okay, I try McDonald's. I need to try Burger King. So it was really interesting because I didn't know how to ask, but even though it was Miami and I was supposed to like, well, I mean, everyone should speak Spanish, I guess. But this particular person that was kind of like, the taking the orders didn't speak any Spanish. So I was like, okay, so at least I can say number one. Just kind of like, okay, so at least I can say that. So I say number one, and the person asked me, you want the combo? And I say, I guess. I say, yes, because I didn't know what was the meaning of that. It was the French fries and the soda included. And then So they gave me this stuff, and I wanted to ask for ketchup. But if you know a little bit of Spanish, you say salsa de tomate, right?
Mhm.
It's just, there's three different words to explain that. So I start asking about it, like tomato sauce, because I wanted ketchup. But I say,
Yeah.
do you have tomato sauce? And the person was puzzled by the answer, by my question. Like, tomato sauce, what is that? And looking back, and like thinking after so many years about it, and say like, why this particular person didn't make that connection? Tomato sauce, it's ketchup. I mean, something that is made of tomato.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was kind of like baptisms by fire.
Mhm.
So after that, I spent about 6 years in Tuscaloosa. Then I moved to Ohio, where I finished my bachelor degree at Ohio University. Go Bobcats. And then I finished. Then I went to Auburn. So I came back to Alabama, Auburn University. I was doing one semester I was doing a master's in literature. So I spent it only one semester until I got accepted into MSU. So I did my master's there. I spent 2 years there from 2010 to 2013. Yeah. So I was there as a grad student. So I was not only taking classes, but also I was teaching the 100, 200 level. I taught a class also on the 300 level, 310, just probably Nick is aware of what that entails. So I taught that for 1 year. Then I moved to Florida, to Gainesville, to work on my PhD. So 2006, I came back to MSU. I came back as an instructor, teaching Spanish, different levels. The position for the coordinator opened up for, I think, 2 years ago. I applied for it. I got the job. So I'm being the coordinator at the BLI, the basic language instruction program in Spanish since then.
Okay.
Very interesting. Yeah, you definitely have you've lived in a lot of different places, especially in the US. I think you've lived in more places than I have, and I think then obviously Derek has lived in Brazil, but you've lived in more spots than us, which is really cool. And I'm sure seeing all these different cultures, for example, going to a Burger King for the first time, and there's lots of different things that in the United States, it's very unique and different. So I think that's definitely awesome. And going in, kind of segueing into culture. Obviously you're from Colombia, and like you said, America has a big impact on their culture, but what are some things about Colombian culture, for example, whether it's specifically in Cali or the different regions, or Colombia in general? What are some unique things about Colombian culture? Just give us a lowdown, like your favorite parts of it, just in general,
and what you miss most too.
Yes, that's a great question.
Well, I mean, it's again a loaded question, but let me try to break it down. So I would say one of my favorite parts of the Colombian culture is family, celebrations, and obviously food, because this is kind of like they go hand in hand, I guess. As a child, I enjoy spending a lot of time like getting together with my family and celebrating stuff, any birthdays or Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, New Year's Eve, all those sorts of celebration. I mean, every single birthday, it was kind of like a big gathering and stuff. So that's one of the things, it's one of my favorite parts growing up, getting together with my family. But I just start growing up and family is not as appealing anymore. So it's not like spending time with your family. That's not fun. Let's go out, you get your groups of friends now, and then it's just going to the bars and dancing and doing all stuff, right? So it was about that. So, but it's always, like I say, always celebrations, and food is always kind of like a big part of that, big part of the culture. And about Cali, I miss the people. I miss my family, obviously. I miss how hopeful, how fun, how witty the people in Cali are. My friends, obviously, my family. That's what I miss the most. And of course the food, because East Lansing, they don't have a Colombian restaurant, so it's the closest one is in Chicago. But I don't have any issues whatsoever driving 4 hours just to enjoying a Colombian dish once in a while. And every single time I go somewhere in the US, either any city, I always try. The first thing I look is, well, I wonder if they had a Colombian restaurant there. So it's
And what is what is your favorite Colombian dish? Like your favorite specific food? Because I don't know, Derek, I don't know if you know anything about Colombian food, because I don't think I've ever tried it.
I've had some. I had some arepas, although some people claim it's not from there, some people claim it is from there. So we won't get into that. But yeah, I've had a couple dishes on occasion, but
I think
definitely still a lot to try.
We have to learn a lot too, and so Francisco, you go ahead and tell us your favorite dish.
I would say tamales, and when you hear the word tamales, probably the first thing that will come to your mind will be something similar to Mexican tamales. Mexican tamale. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but they tend to be a little bit on the sweet side, right?
A little bit.
A little bit, right? Well, Colombian tamales are a little bit different because they are bigger, but for the most part, and they have meat. So there's different types of tamales depending on the region where you live in Colombia. So in my region, the tamales are bayunos, because the state or the department where I live is called Valle. So it's called tamales bayunos. So these are a little bit different because they are made with potatoes, carrots, and you can put beef or pork or chicken, or all of them. So it's a huge dish. It's mostly when you have huge gatherings, your family is getting together. They are difficult to make, and also it takes a little while to get them done. So usually all the family kind of participates on kind of like preparing the tamales for the entire family. So that's something I miss a lot. But there's some sancocho, which is a soup that has chicken. Sometimes they put beef. It depends. But it's like a one of those things that is made probably every Saturday. It's like a special dish, for the weekends or for celebrations. In the US, if you go to a restaurant, probably they'll give you sancocho any day. But it's also, it takes a little bit of time to prepare as well.
That's really cool that it's like the whole family kind of participates in getting that ready, right? Because like at least here, I feel like that only happens maybe for like Thanksgiving and maybe like Christmas, if that, right? But normally, it's just one or two people in the house cooking. So yeah, I guess just that sense of family, sense of culture that is, sense of family, sense of community that's embedded in the culture is just awesome.
Yeah. It's especially like you said, Derek, in the United States, obviously like family is important, and that develop, like it depends on each family, obviously, and we all love our family members, but something that I've noticed too with like, Colombia and, Derek, things I've heard about you from Brazil and other people we've talked with our language partners, just in general, I feel like that sense of family is it's like the center of life, like this, like your family. I'm not saying it isn't here, but I love that extra emphasis on family and always being there for each other no matter what, and doing stuff together. And, everyone has a part in cooking the dishes. Like that's, I'm just envisioning, I'm like, dang, I want to invite Francisco's, his family dinners. Like I would, I want to come eat with them. That sounds so much fun.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, besides that, the music is a big part, because everyone is either, so the region where I'm from is well known for salsa music. So pretty much since you're a little kid, one of the things you need to learn is how to dance. I was not really into it. I was every single time, everyone, we're family gatherings, 1:00 in the morning, everyone is a little tipsy, come and dance. And you're like, no, thank you. I'd rather do something else. For me growing up, it was more like video games. It was the time where the Nintendo system came out. So it was just about that, playing video games and kind of like playing soccer or doing something else than dancing. I didn't know that it was gonna be a huge thing for me growing up, because you go to parties and you are the only one not dancing. And then let's go and dance. No, my knee hurts. Not today.
That's how it is.
Yeah. I'm sure as Derek, you can tell, I never got formal dance lessons, and obviously as somebody who's 6'6", dancing is not my strong suit, and especially if I go out and you hear a good song, I'm not the kind of guy who's just gonna I don't want to stand there, but I also don't want to look like a fool when I dance. So I'm like, I gotta create my own dance moves and see what happens. So.
It is funny. It's one of my favorite things is just watching Nick dance, and then he probably will say the same thing about me because I can't dance either. So we're all together in that one.
But I think definitely I've always wanted to learn some traditional South American dances, because obviously there's salsa. I've heard of the vallenato. Obviously, I don't know if it's a dance per se, but obviously reggaeton, and that's obviously big in Colombia. All the different artists of reggaeton with Balvin, Juanes. I mean, he's not reggaeton, but Carlos Vives, Maluma, baby, Papi Wancho, Derek and
I know there's always new ones coming out. It's hard to keep track. I know Becky G is from Colombia, also kind of getting famous now.
Karol G.
You guys are putting out some
Karol G. I don't know why I say Becky G. Becky G is from you see names. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, did you have anything else here, Nick, to ask?
We had to give a special shout out to Sebastian Yatra also, because that's me and Derek, our personal favorite. We listened to all of his songs. We actually went to one of his concerts a couple months ago in California. We saw Yatra, Ricky Martin, and Enrique Iglesias, and we were only there for Yatra. But
is Yatra Colombian too?
Yeah, he's from Medellin.
Well, I didn't know that. Okay.
The more you know. The more you know.
Good to know.
He's quite paisa.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. One very particular accent and very particular way to speak. A little bit different from the people in my region, and probably Nick is now more aware of those differences.
Yeah.
Going off of that, and I guess we'll use that right there as our transition. So in your opinion, Francisco, what are the most, what is the most important part of language learning for you and your experience?
Well, I mean, L2 learners, when you're learning a new language, either a second or third, it's always, you tend to focus a lot on kind of like the acquiring the language, kind of like getting into morphosyntax, learning conjugations, learning vocabulary, the lexical part, and also getting familiar with the sounds. But all of that is also associated with culture, and that's the really interesting part for me. It's just you're learning a language, but that somehow brings also the culture associated with that language, right? And that for me is the really interesting part. Sometimes the culture is not as explicit as it should be, but kind of like students get all students, and also if you are not a student, you start getting like little pieces of that culture as well. So language and culture, I believe they are kind of intertwined, and when you learn one, you tend to also learn the other one as well. So everything that is associated with that, with the people who speak also that language. When you learn a language, also you learn the history of the people that speak the language. And it's really interesting that when you had the chance to travel and go, you learn a language, or you're learning a language, go to visit a particular, it's a different mindset for the speaker, for the person visiting the country, that it's a different level experience for the person, but it's also for the people, for the native speakers as well. And one of the most fascinating parts of it is that it's really interesting how people react when they hear you trying to speak their native language, and it just creates a different type of connection. It's like an instant connection that it can be created right away, right? I remember growing up, there are many people from the US, but also from Europe, visiting Cali, and I did for 1 year the military service, which is mandatory in Colombia, and I was selected to be in the touristic police. I didn't know any English at all, but I lie. I say, yeah, I know English. So they select me to be in this, and they basically what they do is that they put you in different places in which the tourists usually go and visit, and most of the time they just ask for directions, or they just ask kind of like basic questions. It was really nice to see how these people, even though sometimes their Spanish was not the best, it was how we do, you that speak a total different language that I don't understand, how we communicate each other, how we try to get into this type of conversation. I can give you the information you need, the direction you need, and that connection that creates. It's just it was really, really amazing for me to see these people trying to speak my native language, but it was for me, the experience, it was really worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we talked a little bit about that in one of our prior episodes, just kind of like that effort of like when you see someone trying to speak your language, right? And like, or when you go and try to speak someone else's language, and the connection, like you said. So it's cool hearing that you've also had like that experience, right? Kind of corroborating our prior episode here.
Yeah, he's reinforcing really everything we've said in the past couple episodes. And I know, Derek, this is your favorite quote, and Francisco, I'm sure you've probably heard this as well, but it's from Nelson Mandela. It's probably the third or fourth time we've said this quote, even on the podcast, but it's so great.
Maybe 10th by now.
20th, maybe. But it's, if you speak to someone in a language they understand, it speaks to their head. But if you speak to someone in their native language, it speaks to their heart. And, people really appreciate that. They open up completely. And a lot of times too, like, when you least expect it, somebody, like me and Derek, people, not to like profile us, but like you said, we don't really look like people who would speak Spanish. And, seeing a lot of times in the US, a lot of Americans won't make the effort to learn the language because they think, oh, everybody should be learning English and speaking English. But I feel like especially with Americans, when people see Americans learning or like trying to learn the language or even just like little words, it goes a long way. And
Yeah,
you
it
see,
is.
you see people open up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I say, it creates a different type of connection.
Mhm.
Because
Yep.
I think also like you see the one person like, you know, they're vulnerable in a sense, you know, because they're not,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, you're allowing yourself to be wrong, right? But anyways, yeah, let's
Yeah,
next
and
question.
let me, if I just can add, it's because so most of the time people will be reluctant to go to any country, to
Mhm.
a foreign country and try to speak their native language, right? Because they say, oh, I just don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to, kind of like people make fun of me because I'm not speaking. But more than likely people will be like, hey, no, that's okay. And getting little parts of it that I can at least kind of parts, I can associate some meaning to it, so I can help you out. And that's one or two words, it will make a difference, a big difference. And that connection. I don't know. People in Hispanic country, they tend to be really helpful. And they like to collaborate with the people who don't speak the language really well, and they try to help you as much as they can to either guide you or answer any questions you might have. So yeah, don't ever say, oh, I don't speak the language fluently, I'm not going to speak it at all. Don't do that. Just try your best and see what happens, because that's the only way you can actually learn.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think one of the key parts we've talked about as well in other episodes, especially when it comes to language learning in schools, and I know you kind of talked about this too with language and culture, Francisco, but in general, you can't just learn a language by being in the classroom and by simply learning and studying textbooks out in grammar. Like obviously that's important, but the whole part of language learning is stepping outside of the classroom and immersing yourself in the culture and communicating with people and getting that immersion. And I think that's where the passion and the true enjoyment can come from. And that's where it can be life-changing, is just by making those connections and immersing yourself in the culture and just changing your perspective on the world. It's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And one of the things I had seen since I started, teaching and teaching Spanish is that I like to see how students can go from, they start at a certain level and they go through the different classes that they need to take, and then they go and study abroad. They go to Spain, or they go to Argentina or to Ecuador, and then when they come back, it's just like their Spanish had just completely exploded. It's just a different, and traveling, like Nick says, it's just changed the way you see the world, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing experience. I've been studying abroad for 22 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely an unbelievable experience.
A very extended semester now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish MSU had a 22-year study abroad program. I wish that would be awesome.
Where would you go, Nick? Where would you go?
Man, that's way too hard of a question. I would want to.
Colombia is the only right answer while he's in
I was gonna say Medellin, so I can learn how to speak like a paisa, but I think I can't say that on this podcast. It'd have to be Cali.
No, anywhere it will be a really fun experience, and also, most of the people will be like, oh, Hispanics, the culture is pretty much the same, the language is pretty much the same. It's just I can go from one country to the other, pretty much is going to be the same, and that's totally far from the truth, right? But you can go anywhere and you can learn about that particular culture, about how the people in this country speak, and even you can go kind of like to the kind of more micro, and you can learn about those differences between, for example, paisas and the people from the North Coast, or the people from the capital, from Bogota, and how the people from Cali, and you will be very surprised to learn how different they behave in certain situations, how different they speak, and that level of friendliness that they have, their level of closeness that they have with other people. It's really interesting to see those differences and experience those kind of like learn about those differences as well.
Exactly. So I think that's 3 questions we've had for you, Francisco. I think that leaves one more for this part of the episode. And I think you kind of already touched on it. I think you've already answered it. But that is, if you were to meet up with somebody who is unsure about starting to learn another language, like they weren't sure if they wanted to do it or not, what would be the one thing you would say to them, and why?
Well, I mean, probably you heard a lot about, what are the cognitive benefits of learning a language, right? I mean, it's about, improves your memory. It's about help you to be a better problem solver, to expand your critical skills and stuff like that. But it's also pushes your brain, right? And get familiar with the different writing system, or getting familiar with the new vocabulary. And I mean, if you go from English to Spanish, I mean, in terms of writing, you don't see that much differences. There are sounds that might be a little bit different. For example, remember, Nick, vibrantes, múltiples, right? That
Exactly.
most of the people, when they're learning, had some difficulties producing, right? They know it's different, but they had a hard time producing those sounds like right? But the most you use it, kind of you were acquiring over time all the sounds that are not in your native language. But kind of like the big picture of it is kind of deepens with your relationship with other cultures, right? And kind of like it gives you a better sense of the world, because now you're not looking at it from kind of like a micro perspective. You're now looking at the kind of like the bigger picture of what the world is. I mean, even if you're not planning to visit other countries and speak that particular language, it also helps you to advance your career, basically, because you can use it as like an instrument. I speak Spanish, I'm a physician. I speak Spanish, and a lawyer. And now you expand a little bit more. You broaden that kind of the audience that you might have. Kind of that would be your customers or your patients, or whatever, right? So it has many advantages, not only at the cognitive level, but also career-wise, and also kind of like I mean, it's just help you to develop kind of like better critical thinking. Even it's just too many benefits to be able to kind of like pinpoint what will be the most kind of like the most beneficial for you, because there's many benefits to it, but many of them might apply to any person who wants to learn a new language, right?
Yeah, no, and our last episode was literally on benefits of learning
an entire episode.
So yeah, you just literally everything you said was like right in line with what we said. So it's good knowing that you share the opinions. We should have had him on last time.
We should have. I think we got him on the wrong episode. My goodness.
It took us like 40 minutes, and you did it in like 2 or 3 right there.
Yeah,
so,
a lot more effective than us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can spend a lot of time talking about all the benefits and how it can help you advance. Not only, like I said, in your life, but also in your career as well. So it's just many benefits that are really different. Like I said, many will apply to one particular person, and career-wise or personal, in the personal life.
And in even fewer words, if I could sum that all up in 2 words, it would be do it. Just go out and do it. Learn.
I thought you were gonna say just do it, and we were gonna get sued by Nike.
Yeah, we would get a lawsuit against us.
It's a non-sponsored episode.
Yeah.
I mean, many people see they look for example, languages, for example, Mandarin, or they look at Japanese and they say, wow, that will be really hard to learn. But that's the same experience that you're going to have learning, even like, for example, Russian, that they had a different writing system, right? But it's pretty much the same experience for whether you're learning Spanish or learning, I don't know, French or Italian or German. Pretty much it's the same experience. You just have to go and try to acquire little by little. This is stages that you have to go through, right? And the more you are involved in that particular process, the easier it becomes for you to learn the language.
Yep. There are simply too many benefits not to do it. And I think overall, it's just an enjoyable experience, and it's just life-changing. It simply is. And so that's the whole point of our podcast, is just to inspire others to learn languages and help make the process as easy as possible. So we appreciate all that advice, Francisco. I think everyone else does as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of this episode. Does anybody have anything else they want to say before we go ahead and do our wrap up? Francisco, Derek, any closing comments, questions, concerns?
Like I said, I was happy to be part of your podcast. Thank you so much for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on here, Francisco, and just giving us the advice, taking the time to, talk about languages in your native country of Colombia, and hopefully you've inspired a bunch of people to learn languages and also go visit Colombia as well.
All right. That's it's always fun. It's a beautiful country. Depending on what you want to do, there's always something there's always somewhere something for everyone. So it's just whether you are into kind of like go and go to the mountains, or if you are more into city, go to museums and enjoy more like the city life, the countryside. I mean, there's always something for everyone. So I can see, I cannot say you just need to go and see it and experience it by yourself. And then, like I say, it's going to be a life-changing experience for everyone who decides to do that.
Without question. Well, we appreciate you all giving us another listen today on this episode. As always, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, your favorite Spotify platform. I forgot about Google Podcasts as well. Got to shout that out as well. So yeah, feel free to give us a subscribe, give us a listen on those podcast forms, whatever your preferred method is. Feel free to check us out on Instagram too, at Langringos Podcast. And always, if you have any questions, comments, whatever it may be, feel free to email into us, langringospodcast@gmail.com. And that about wraps up our episode. We appreciate you all giving us a listen, and hasta la próxima.